one of America's oldest and richest families built two amazing mansions in Rhode Island. Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. Elizabeth Sturges' fortunes flowed from the Hazard family of Peacedale, a Rhode Island dynasty whose wealth was spun from wool. The story begins in 1802 when her great-great-grandfather, Roland Hazard, bought a half-interest in a small fulling mill on the Saugatucket River. Over the next 5 generations, the Hazards turned that modest operation into the Peacedale Manufacturing Company, the mainstay of the family's financial empire and by its own proud claim, the place where the first power looms were successfully operated in America, if not in the world. The family practically built the village around its mills, right down to the library, the church, and the memorial hall. And for more than a century, the fortunes of Peacedale and the fortunes of the Hazards were one and the same. They were also never content to be mere mill owners. Elizabeth's great-great-grandfather, Roland Gibson Hazard, ran the family looms by day and wrote philosophy by night, publishing treatises on the freedom of the will and trading long letters on the subject with John Stuart Mill, one of the most celebrated thinkers of the age. His son Roland pushed the family into bolder territory, branching into lead mining, and then, in 1881, helping to found the Solvay Process Company in upstate New York, the first American producer of soda ash, and such a success that the company town outside Syracuse is still named Solvay today. Elizabeth's father, Roland Gibson Hazard II, was a Brown University graduate who served as a vice president of that enormously profitable chemical enterprise and poured money into schools, libraries, and civic buildings across Rhode Island. It was into this world of wool, chemistry, and fortune Elizabeth Hazard was born in the 1880s. In 1908, she married Rush Sturges, an ambitious young Providence lawyer, and the match proved as practical as it was happy, for Rush soon became legal counsel to the Hazard family's many enterprises, among them the Narragansett Improvement Association. A family of such standing needed a proper city seat, and in 1922, Elizabeth got one, a brand new mansion at 55 Power Street in the Levy College Hill neighborhood of Providence. The address alone was a statement. Power Street runs through the heart of the city's oldest and grandest quarter, and just across the street stands the John Brown House of 1788. To build here was to invite comparison with the finest houses of the early Republic, and Elizabeth hired an architect with both the pedigree and the training to meet it. William T. Aldrich was Rhode Island aristocracy himself. Born in 1880, he was a son of Nelson W. Aldrich, the longtime United States Senator from Rhode Island who carried the Senate Finance Committee and wielded such power over the country's money matters that he was nicknamed the General Manager of the nation. William's sister Abby married John D. Rockefeller Jr., which made the architect a brother-in-law of the richest family in America and an uncle of the future Vice President Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller. William himself chose drafting tables over politics and banking. He trained at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and then in Paris at the École des Beaux-Arts, the finishing school of America's greatest architects, and he went on to build a distinguished Boston practice known especially for museum work. For the Sturges family, Aldrich produced a restrained essay in Georgian Revival, a mansion of warm brick with a flat roof. A strong horizontal cornice cuts across the elevation above the first 2 floors, giving the top story the look of an attic and lending the whole house a broad, spreading presence. The effect deliberately recalls the grand China trade mansions of the neighborhood while feeling somehow more worldly and complex than any of them, a 20th century architect holding a knowing conversation with his 18th century neighbors. And the house does not stand alone, for its east and south sides open onto a walled garden with wrought iron fencing, brick walls, and garden sculpture, an outdoor room composed as carefully as any interior. Inside, the Providence house trades its refined exterior for a more adventurous spirit. The stair hall is where Aldrich had his most playful ideas. Instead of the traditional colonial passage running straight through the house from front door to garden, he placed a lateral hall that runs the full width of the home just behind the entrance, a French Renaissance arrangement that reflected his Beaux-Arts training and put every principal room within a few steps of the door. At its heart rises an elaborate staircase, its curving sweep so photogenic that the architectural photographer, Paul J. Weber, made it a centerpiece of the album he shot of the house around 1930. The sitting rooms are dressed in neoclassical detail with niches, handsome fireplaces, and delicate moldings, and they are arranged in a line, each room opening into the next and out onto the terrace and garden beyond, so that on a warm evening, the whole ground floor could flow together into one continuous party. The dining room carries some of the home's most memorable flourishes. Above all, its scenic wallpaper, whose sweeping painted landscapes wrap the walls in color and give dinner guests something to explore between courses. Paneling and fine moldings complete the room, lending it the quiet formality expected of a family of the Hazard standing. If Power Street was Elizabeth's formal parlor, Wakefield was the family's great escape. In 1933, in the very depths of the Depression, the Sturges family built a summer estate in the village of Wakefield, Rhode Island, back in the family's ancestral South County. And this time, they wanted nothing polished or urban. The house they raised is a rugged manor of stone in the Norman Romanesque manner, all rough masonry, heavy walls, and picturesque massing, looking less like a Providence mansion than like something carried over from the French countryside and set down on a Rhode Island hilltop. The architect this time was Thomas P. Cope, a Philadelphia designer. For the Sturgeses, he produced a house that feels centuries older than it is, and that was exactly the point. The library and study spaces at Wakefield were designed for deep comfort rather than display. A warm-hued room whose double Dutch doors opened straight onto the manor terraces, the sort of room built for a book, a pipe, and a sea breeze. The dining and gathering rooms carry the sturdy charm of a New England country house, with post and beam trusses overhead, quarry tile floors underfoot, and a dramatic stone fireplace anchoring the largest of them. A relaxed living room opens towards the grounds and rounds out the intimate spaces, and together, these rooms make plain that this was a true family retreat rather than a showplace, a house for sandy feet and long summer dinners rather than receiving lines. Elizabeth and Rush eventually retired full-time to their beloved Wakefield estate, trading the city for the hilltop for good. Elizabeth passed away in 1954, and Rush followed in 1967. The Providence house enjoyed perhaps the most graceful second act any mansion could ask for. The Sturges family gave it to Brown University in memory of Elizabeth's father, transferring the property in 1947, and in 1949, it became the official residence of the university's president. Every Brown president since has lived at 55 Power Street, hosting dinners and receptions in the very rooms where Elizabeth once entertained, so the house remains in dignified use to this day. The Wakefield estate followed a far more winding path. It passed in 1959 to a Catholic religious order, which used it first as a convent and then as a boarding school. And after the school closed in 2012, the Great Stone Manor sat empty for the better part of a decade while its gardens grew wild. Then, in December 2020, the abandoned 36-acre estate was bought and restored, reopening as Shepherd's Run, a winery, inn, and event venue. And on that happy note, I'll turn it over to you. Which of these two houses was your favorite? Let me know down below in the comments section, and while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.